Divestment has worked in history to make the world a better place. We got off slavery in the United States about 100 years ago after a fierce fight about what was legal to sell. And eventually we decided it was illegal to sell humans. Great advancement. But for a long time they struggled over that. And the abolition movement had to demand that people wake up to their moral conscience not to enslave other races. We just saw a thing about Frederick Douglass the other day and how he pushed his society forward by demanding that they take a moral account of themselves. And that is the same call that we have to do in our era. We have to insist on a moral culture that plans for the future. We're not at all doing that now, and it's not righteous. It's not right. We have a right to demand a livable future, and it's just frankly immoral to keep investing when the oceans are 40% more acidic than they used to be, and so forth. Just to introduce who's going to talk, we have Todd Walker here from Progressive Asset Management. He's going to introduce us to Divestment 101 and how you could take your money out of fossil fuel stocks. Bill Laberge will be presenting on opportunities for solar investment. And we're going to hear a little bit about promoting organic farmers, so investing forward. And that's about it for maybe as an introduction. And maybe I'll come back and hit it later. But Todd, you want to come say a couple words?
Sure.
Green.
You won't be famous for 5 miles.
Is it live right now?
Shot, you know.
Is it live right now?
It is.
Greetings. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly because it's fairly basic, but for those at home, I developed this talk because as the divestment movement really got underway, we manage money on a regular basis, and I'll get into a little bit of what we do. But we get a lot of people saying, I just want to divest, I just want out. It's very similar to about 10 years ago when we had people come and say, I'm going to put all my money in solar. I really believe in solar. And as an investment professional, we have to sit back and talk about balance and basic investment principles. And so I came up with this talk because I wanted to, we're obviously in the divestment side, but at the same time, it has to be done in the right way so you don't harm your portfolio. So this is a tactical kind of approach. And I also want to tie it back to social responsible investing because divestment has been part of SRI for 25 years. Who is PAM? Very briefly, we're the nation's largest network of advisors specializing in SRI with less than 7,000 clients. We're really one of the first that was a full-service investment firm that decided just to do SRI. It's funny because the divestment movement keeps talking about apartheid, and PAM is a product of that era, the mid-'80s, where apartheid galvanized the investment community, and there were people doing social responsible investing at various major firms, Merrill and Morgan Stanley, and they realized when apartheid came together and there was this great interest, they said, why don't we just start forming firms that just do SRI? The first group that decided to divest were the Quakers. This was the beginning. They would not invest and put their money with anyone who was doing slavery. Theo went there. So that was all very good. I liked that beginning very much. The 350.org is really just the latest major divestment campaign. There's been many divestments from tobacco, et cetera. And it was originally directed at college endowments. Now it's spreading to pension plans, individuals, and the goal, which is the goal really of 350.org is to have the largest 200 companies leave their assets in the ground. But the way my clients see it, most clients, and I'll get into this a little bit, don't call up and say, I want those 200 companies. They basically say, I want fossil-free or not. But technically, this is what the 350.org is about. And you can get the company list at some of these websites, which you probably know about. We call it divestment in the nick of time, in the sense that you had this gigantic drop in oil stock prices through the fall and early winter. And the call for fossil-free divestment was actually very timely from an investment perspective. Just so happens. And there's some reasons for that. A lot of it is oversupply, but I think a lot of it is because the divestment movement has put a shadow of doubt into the investment community as to maybe there is something to this stranded assets thing that maybe, you know, these companies aren't worth quite what they say they are because they'll never be able to pump all this stuff out of the ground. So that's a typical investment reason as to why divestment makes sense, that there's either, you know, in this particular case with oil, it's declining reserves, social objections to use, declining business, and stranded assets. Biggest force in social responsible investing is actually institutions and colleges and endowments. They've got the big money and they make the big, just like apartheid. That was the biggest impact against South Africa, is the pension plans pulling out. So when you talk about social responsible investing and you go into a college, the colleges are very, colleges in particular, but also other institutions, are very reluctant to have that term because they have to define it. What is social, what isn't social, and it makes it difficult for them to divest. But this environmental, social, and corporate governance is an easier term for them to swallow. And so ESG became very popular in the institutional area. So there's reasons why these terms are used, but this social responsible investing, again, became a political football in institutions, so it's not used as much there. Social responsible investing, you define what matters to you. This slide's taken from a presentation I really is SRI 101, so I know you know this. What is social responsible investing? Your values, but what's interesting is that people don't talk about the second one as much, which is, it's about your values and it's about what matters to you, but it's really also about, and this dated back to the 80s and apartheid, is what can social responsible investors do collectively as a force for social change. And that's, you know, that's the other large component of our business and our mission. You may have heard the double bottom line as far as SRI. Conventional investing, single bottom line, profit at any cost. Difference with us, probably everybody in this room, it has to be profitable. There are nonprofit segments of SRI, and of course there are nonprofit segments throughout the country. And you'll see why that's important. But you know about load and no load and all that, I'm sure. But so here are the fossil-free funds as they stand now. The Green Century funds, totally fossil-free. They were in the right place at the right time because they'd always been fossil-free, and so they are. You know, this has been a good thing for them and for everyone. But they only have 2 funds, so that makes it a little, you know, restrictive. Pax World Growth Fund, they've decided that one Pax World Fund is, they've decided to do fossil-free. I'm sorry, 2, and then there's the Global Environment Markets. Shelton Green Alpha is a new fund in the West Coast. Portfolio 21 has been around for a long time there in the West Coast. New Alternatives Fund is really fossil-free simply because they've always, you know, they've never been into oil and they're always into, you know, new alternative energy and things like that. So it's almost by default they would be. And the same with the Caliber Global Water Fund. Water can't be oil, so it's by default a global alternative energy. Parnassus decided to make one of their funds fossil-free. And it's something you can pick ETFs. Do people know what exchange-traded funds are here? Anybody? You do? Exchange-traded funds are simply a collection of individual stocks and bonds that trades like one stock or a bond on the markets. So you can just buy it, and there are certain advantages versus mutual funds. But I won't go into a big explanation about that. But there are a lot of exchange-traded funds that, because they're cheaper to run, they can be much more targeted on the investments that they do. That's why you'll see exchange-traded funds do just solar or just wind, because they're a lot cheaper to run than a mutual fund. And mutual funds can't they need a large number of investors to survive. Anyway, something like the Environmental Services Fund is mostly waste management, waste collection. So again, that's not going to be fossil-free. So there's not that many choices. And the last thing is, you know, you can use a financial advisor if you want to do social responsible investing. I'm sure you know about that. The only thing I'll bring up on this is that there's certain advantages of having an advisor. But in the social area, if you're going to choose one, they should be able to have a social questionnaire so they can actually and you can tell them exactly what matters to you, and what to avoid and what you want to prefer. They should have wide access to social investments. They should be able to provide social research in any individual investment, and proxy voting advice, which is something we do, because a lot of people have these portfolios, either they built themselves or acquired or they've inherited, with just a whole rack of single individual securities, and they keep getting these proxies and they want to know how to vote on them. And and one of the things you'll see in those proxies are these shareholder resolutions I talked about. So I think you know about that. So this is down, finally, we're getting to the divestment part. I get the feeling again that most of you know this kind of thing, but when you wade into this, what I get from clients is, oh, I want to be fossil free. So how far do you want to go? Do you want to do just the 200 companies from the carbon tracker, 350.org, with the largest reserves in the ground, or just coal? Now, Stanford University was clever because this divestment thing is a real political, again, in football and all these universities, because they've got people who, they may have Exxon donating money to the school. They've got some students who are Republicans, some students are Democrats, so it's a very tough one. And that's why it's been not many, that many colleges have gone fossil free totally as of yet. Some of the small ones that are more alternative have, but the larger ones are kind of tiptoeing in. One thing that's interesting about the 200 companies from the carbon tracker is that and why it's not that hard to divest, which I'll keep getting into, is that 100 of these companies are coal.
Oh.
So it's like, boom. I mean, coal is, it's still being used quite a bit in utilities, but gas is replacing it. And coal is really, I think, the major target of all the solar in the end. Because in some ways it's interesting that the amount of renewables that have been sold are really not influencing the oil, because oil is not used by utilities anymore. They don't burn oil, very little. Anyway, so 100 of the companies in the carbon tracker are coal, so that's an easy one to get rid of. And so some people, I do have clients that will say, well, some of them are actually endowments that say, well, really, we're okay with oil as long as they're enlightened oil. If they're really trying to clean up, they've really got, they have a solar division or something, but we don't want coal. So when you start defining, you have to define for yourself what is fossil free. Is it just coal? Is it all fossil fuel companies of any size? Is it natural gas too? Because natural gas, for many years, was considered to be social, because it was a transition fuel. It was viewed as a way to at least get off of oil or heavy oils on the way to renewables. So natural gas was okay. And then you get down to, well, is it drillers and refiners, or what about pipelines and transporters, that people who don't actually pull it out of the ground? Are they okay? And how about fossil fuel service companies like Schlumberger? People build the drills and build the ships and all that, but don't actually, they're just supplying the equipment to the industry. Is that okay? And what about lenders? Then you really go, you start expanding this out and out and out. If you have lenders to the fossil fuel companies, that's all, pretty much all the major banks, which you may want to avoid anyway, I don't know. So that's the first step, is, where do you draw the line? And that's true of so much divestment that we go into. The next step is you have to screen your current investments. We talked about it before, individual stocks and bonds, for fossil-free participation. Mutual funds and ETFs, for that you're going to go to the current holdings, very easy on their website. They'll show you the top 10, and then there was a little button typically in the bottom says all holdings. And you claim, typically they're not going to advertise all the holdings in a way, because they don't want everybody to know exactly what they're holding. They want to, it's their secret sauce to a certain extent. So, they're publicly available, but they typically, you can get them on the sites or in the annual reports. And in a managed portfolio, you need to talk to your financial advisor. If you've got a manage something that you're taking from a non-social brokerage firm and going to a social brokerage firm like us, at that point, we have to prepare a review of what is, depending on your definition of fossil free or other things. Our questionnaire gets into child labor and nuclear and dictatorships and everything. There's a much larger list of investment besides just oil. And so then we have to do a screening on whatever you own now, what is involved here. And then finally, step 3, this could be a talk all by itself, and I realize I've taken up half the thing. Am I okay?
Maybe
Wind it down.
Yeah.
Wind it down. Wrap it up. Okay. All right, then I'll go over this quickly.
You have other presenters that are.
No, I know. I'm sorry.
Laberge, I can tell, is just itching to get up.
I know. He keeps flashing a mirror in my face. That's all. And this was, I know. So this is only a fraction of what the whole talk is. But anyway, So this is the thing, this is what I was talking about. So, okay, you have this portfolio, and someone says, I just want to invest, I'm just really either excited about it or upset or, sick of the oil. So then as you start doing that, you have to be very careful and on all these levels. These are all, things to talk about on any portfolio, before you're going to start moving money around or even construct it. These are the issues you have to look at. And things come up right away, which wouldn't occur probably to the non-professional, but to the professional would. I want to get rid of oil. I want to get rid of all the oil, and I want to put into this scenario, and I want to put it into solar and wind. And as soon as you do that, when you look at an allocation for a typical portfolio, you're going to have large companies, mid companies, small companies. You're going to have bonds. Value, growth. I mean, these are the sorts of things we do as we create and construct a portfolio, the pie chart. Well, if you're going to take these large oil companies, which are large caps, and suddenly take all that money and move it into solar, either individuals or even ETFs or something, or mutual funds, you've now skewed your portfolio from being, as much as we may dislike the oil companies, they are stable. And so if they're stable, they're large, and they're reliable to a certain extent until recently. But if you're going to go switch all that to small companies, these are very volatile, and thinking of Evergreen Solar and others that are going bankrupt. So you have to think about asset allocation. You have to think about taxes, because of course if you're going to take an inherited portfolio or something that was even worse given to you while the donor was still alive, so that it was not reset for capital gains, you could just say, that's it. I've seen this happen. I've had people come to a portfolio and say, I did it in my previous brokerage, and now it's all in cash, and I want you to invest it. And I'll say, well, whoa, wait a minute, you just sold it all, like whatever it was, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're going to hit with a whopping capital gains tax if these had appreciated. So you have to, as you start selling out, you have to think about your taxes. You typically stagger it. You're going to sell this over time, so much a year, in order to, you've also got fees. If you were to sell this in a commission account that charges commission, you could be, hit with large commission costs. So you have to think about fees. How do I stagger that? Dividend income, back to that example of the large oil companies, they pay these steady income, steady dividends. You move all that into solar, these are startup companies, they have no dividends. And so a lot of people have been depending on this dividend income in their portfolio, and they could sell it all and realize, oh my God, I'm not getting this dividend check I need anymore. Then of course, the market environment, is it in the right time now? Is it the right time to sell? Right now, it would be a great time to sell oil stocks if you did have that high appreciation so you wouldn't get as highly taxed. Belief may say you'd sell it anyway, but traditional economic stock theory would be that the oil companies may rise again and then sell them, but that's tactical. And then the security research, you have to do research before you start, just saying, I'm just going to invest in any old thing. I think after this, yeah, so this, I'll let this go. This is like some current investment ideas and things, but I think we don't need to do that. So, and I will somehow turn this off. Did have any are there any questions? Do we have time for questions, or or discussion, or what do you want to do?
Why don't you show your current investment ideas slide? I don't know, that seems like a good one.
Well, it goes on for about 10 slides.
Well, you can have a wider conversation in a minute. Bill, you want to switch up? So he may not look like a fire-breathing radical, but this scares the oil companies. This discussion about like stranded assets is actually going to really push things along. The oil companies have like 5 times more oil on their books as they value them themselves than we're going to allow them to burn. And the more serious our movement gets about pushing divestment, the more that is going to seem stuck to them. And we are going to win this. This is taking over college campuses. Divestment movement has been strong at Harvard. And the important thing about divestment is we get to have an argument in public about what's righteous for the future. And institutions that have some moral accountability, like a college, can be brought to bear. So we want to invest in a future we want to live in, which means solar power and the opposite of oil. So Bill Laberge.
So my name is Bill Laberge. I've been working with Theo on his group called Transition Town Manchester since 2008. and our goal has been to get our community to get off of fossil fuels in response to climate change. And so just recently, I've made custom furniture for 26 years. Just recently, I've switched my work to my life's mission, which is to get the planet off of fossil fuels. So now I have my solar company, Grassroots Solar. And I'm glad to follow up Todd, because Todd is talking about an investment portfolio. And what I want to talk about is getting off of I want to talk to you about your consumption portfolio, and I'll be really quick. I'm not going to go through a lot of the details of specific pricing and everything, but I'd like to tell people as we start to go through, we're looking at what their solar capacity is for their house. The best energy investment that you make is the energy that you're not having to spend money on. Weatherize your house, the lowest of low-hanging fruit. If you're spending $4,000 a year to heat your house, and you can cut that in half, then you've got an extra $2,000 to go to Todd and look at some socially responsible investing. So there are ways that you can do that. Really easy. When I go through somebody's house, I'm going to try and figure out what their energy consumption is, talk to them about their appliances, get a fuel-efficient vehicle, look at your heating system. So there are a number of ways that you can do that. And now I want to talk about saving money by investing in solar power. What we're talking about is reducing or eliminating your electric bills. Solar can give you a positive double-digit tax-free return on your money. And by tax-free, what happens is you're going to generate all these kilowatt hours with the solar panels that you have. That's going to zero out your electric bill. So instead of having to earn some money, take that money, pay your electric bills, you're going to take that money and be able to, again, send it over to Todd to do some investing, because it's going to get zeroed out. There's also no sales tax on solar installations, so there's really good tax benefits. As the price of utilities go up, your investment in solar goes up, because the value is based on whatever it is you're paying per kilowatt hour. So as the price of the utility costs go up, over the next 30 years, your values of your solar investment is going to keep going up. They've been showing pretty regularly now that houses that have solar on them, sell for $15,000 to $25,000 more than if they don't. They also sell quicker. And then obviously the biggest thing is to get off of fossil fuels. So that's what I'm really trying to work with people on. Right now, the incentives that are really working in people's favor, there's a 30% federal tax credit. There's in Vermont, for residences and businesses, they have a net metering. So basically you've got solar panels on your rooftop or your property. There's a little generation meter that's going to be keeping track of how many kilowatt hours you produce. For every kilowatt hour you produce, they're going to pay you what the retail rate is. It's usually 15 cents, plus an additional 5.3 cents. So you're actually, you're paying 15 cents, you're getting paid 20 cents to produce it. And for larger projects, it goes to 4.3 cents, but it's still a pretty good return. Then also for businesses, there's a Vermont solar tax credit as well. And again, for businesses, you actually get to depreciate the equipment as well, just like you can do an accelerated depreciation. So for businesses, it's really easy to get a high double-digit return on your investment. This is a brief description of the net metering program, and I just explained it to you. So if you consume 1,000 kilowatt hours and you generate 500, I just did the math here for you. You're going to end up being only billed for 200 kilowatt hours because you generated 800 and it's zeroed out most of your bill. But you're getting this bonus of 5.3 cents per kilowatt hour. So with that bonus, you actually end up with a net of $12.60. You have a credit on your electric bill. So then what happens is, though, you build up, we try and look at your annualized consumption for the year. And that's why I was talking about your portfolio of consumption. How much do you use? It may be that you have the capacity on your roof to produce more than you use. So you can do what my wife and I did and get an electric car. So we can produce electricity. Now we've taken fossil fuels out of our driving around. We've eliminated, we were paying $200 a month for gas for our cars. We were able to eliminate that. So we look at what your annualized costs are. And then there's, I'm going to talk about group net metering. So right now, I mean, the net metering program basically is set up so that if I have land or rooftop space, I can put up solar panels, and I can put Theo's electric account on it. I can put, if my daughter has a place up in Burlington, I can put her on it. So we can, as a group, we can put together, there's a lot of community solar going up now. We have people here that are doing that. So there's a lot of ways now that as a community, we can work together to get off of our fossil fuels. So it's a really a great opportunity in Vermont especially. And then, so this talks more about what the opportunities are. A lot of nonprofits, one thing about the federal tax credit is you have to have a tax appetite, which nonprofits don't. So a lot of groups are getting together and forming limited liability corporations, building a solar array. They get the tax credits, they get all the write-offs, the depreciation. They donate the electricity to the church or whatever the nonprofit is. After 7 years, they've depreciated the equipment. They can sell that equipment or donate it to the church. The church then has 30 years of free electricity. They've already taken out the tax benefits. So we've got some social investors here, and I'm sure they can get into some more details of that. But there's opportunities for community solar farms. If you can get a group of neighbors together, you can all invest together. I'm going to just go through a few systems. Basically, they're all available for all of those incentives. This is a small rooftop array. We do the All Earth Renewables, which is a local company here in Vermont. They do the All Sun Tracker. We do some ground mounts. And this is actually where I did that ground mount. This is the audience as we were installing it. The llamas were, and you can see the location where we're putting this. This is why I love my job. And again, when I was talking about the portfolio of consumption, and I keep saying this, this friend of ours, she uses $4,000 a year in fuel oil. Cold climate heat pumps will actually use a third of that in electricity. So if you have the capacity to put up solar panels and produce electricity, then these are highly efficient heating systems. So you start to look at what parts of fossil fuels can you remove from your house? One guy had a gas dryer. His house had just been set up years ago. It had a bunch of gas appliances. He switched them all out except this gas dryer. Get rid of the gas dryer. You now no longer consume gas. He puts up the solar panels and he's powering his electric dryer. This is my wife and I with our solar panels, and like I said earlier, we're driving an electric vehicle now, and it's a really fun car to drive. And I've got some numbers here. These are just examples. Obviously everybody's completely different, but I just wanted to show that this is a typical house, 22 panels on it, after the federal tax credit. And it produces about $1,428 a year. You end up with about 10.7% return on your money. You're investing $13,000. You're getting $1,400 the first year. So it's a really good investment. That same one, what happens with commercial is they typically tend to be larger. I just use those that same array of 22 panels just for example, because you get the extra 7.2%. So it actually ends up being an 11.9% return on that initial almost $12,000. For businesses, you also get to depreciate the equipment. So it's actually a higher return than that. One thing that people in Vermont understand is that they pre-buy their fuel, they pre-buy their gas. Solar is pre-buying your electricity for the next 30 years or so. This is my information. I just wanted to talk about, when we look at our getting off of fossil fuels and socially responsible investing, I think this is a really good way to do it. So, thanks for listening.
All right. Peter also and Sally. Maybe Sally leads first.
Do you want to get the?
No, you go ahead, Mike.
And then I'll say a couple things and we'll open up to the discussion. Maybe you'll.
My name's Sally Dodge. I live here in Manchester with my husband Dale Gilbranson, and we have been involved in an impact investment company, which Todd talked briefly about, called Iroquois Valley Farms. And the difference between, from our point of view, the difference between socially responsible investing, which is more screening, impact investment we see more as actually actively investing in something that's going to meet your goals in an active way. Iroquois Valley Farms invests in farmland for organic farmers, and has been doing that for about 8 years. This is our 8th year. And we start with the farmer first. The farmer comes to us and says, will you help me buy a farm? We then identify that farm with the farmer, and then the other end of our spectrum is that we have actively been finding investors, so we have the cash to be able to help that farmer get onto the farmland. We work out a business plan with the farmer to make it affordable for that farmer, and then we lease back to the farmer. The farmer may buy the land after 5 years or so from us. We require that the farmers be organic, because that's the one way we can track sustainable farming. And Dale and I are very excited about this model. We represent the company. It started in Illinois and has been in the Midwest. We're now the Northeast representatives for the company, and the company is expanding now into New York, Maine, and hopefully Vermont soon. The wonderful thing about this whole model for us is that through sustainable food production and sustainable soils, we see this investment moving into good jobs and land for farmers, which has been a real problem for young farmers to find affordable land. And then secondly, creating healthy food for the citizens of the world, creating healthy soils, and I'll go a little bit into that in a minute. I've become a healthy soil nut, but I believe that it is the biggest way for us to, through regenerative farming, combat global climate change and sequester carbon in the soils. We see it as a healthcare company, because if we eat healthy foods, we're going to have healthier people. What else, Dale? We just see the whole company as coming full circle for the things that all of us want to represent.
Well, I think touching a bit more on regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and the impact upon global climate change. I think talking a little bit about that, Sal, would be good.
So 2015 has been declared the year of the soils. I don't know how many people really know that, but the United Nations does, and they're working hard on it. I don't know if you're familiar with Vandana Shiva, but she is a wonderful, sustainable agriculture representative from India, and she's going around the world talking about healthy soils. A lot of us are worried about Monsanto and the big chemical companies and GMOs. Well, one of the reasons, it's not just what GMOs are doing in our food or our insecurity about what they may do to our bodies, but the big thing about GMOs is that when somebody grows a crop, soybeans or corn with GMOs, they're also putting huge amounts of chemical pesticides, herbicides, and the burning fossil fuel fertilizers on their soils. And most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about soil, but soil is created by lots and lots of little microbes, earthworms, things like that that are in the soil. And as we put these chemical additives onto the soil, we're killing our soils and killing those microbes that create and process the carbon that comes in through photosynthesis into the plants, and then creates carbon and sucks carbon actually from.
Hi, I'm Pete Drasher, and I live here in Manchester, Vermont for the last few years. I left traditional Wall Street about 10 years ago to start a non-profit-owned institutional brokerage firm, and we give our profits back to help low-income communities, and publish a research product around that, institutional research around how to invest in low-income communities. But the last couple of years we've been focusing on the environmental sector, and you know, there's some amazing opportunities now to invest in the solutions. So one part of the you know, the carbon issue is taking on the fossil fuel companies either through divestment or through engaging them, holding your shares and engaging them. And you know, I think divestment is certainly an important moral issue, and it's been wildly successful in terms of raising awareness of the carbon problem that we have. But the flip side of that coin is actually investing in the solutions to this, because we're going to need energy for a long time to come, and we're not going to get ourselves off of fossil fuels over the next 20, 30 years. So in the interim, there are things like natural gas is thought of as a transition fuel because it has less emissions, although there's a methane problem with that as well. But there's other solutions. So we've been researching and publishing research on some of the investment solutions and environmental investment solutions. Some is renewable energy. A lot of it is energy efficiency, whether it comes to buildings or cars. And then there are things like you know, investments in water, investments in sustainable agriculture. Another report we just published last summer was on investments in natural ecosystems like forests and wetlands, which now for the first time, because of regulation, is putting a price on those ecosystem services like forests and wetlands, you know, filter our water, clean our air, and provide all types of sequester carbon, produce oxygen, you know, all kinds of essential services, and the regulation of the impacts on these ecosystems and those services is leading to pricing through regulation, and that pricing is for the first time allowing us to actually invest in things like forests and wetlands through either sustainable forestry funds that instead of harvesting their timber you know, as intensively as possible, actually they harvest it less intensely, and they monetize the ecosystem services, so they can produce the same types of returns as a traditional timber investment, but through a sustainable focus. And so anyways, these ecosystem services are allowing us to invest in and conserve forests and wetlands through investment. And but you know, renewable energy, there's a lot going on. Actually, I had lunch with an investment banker yesterday that assured me that in the next 5 years we're not going to be driving electric cars, we're going to be driving hydrogen cars, because hydrogen, I guess 1 kilogram of hydrogen can take you 50 miles. So these cars are going to have ranges of 500 miles, and he assures me hydrogen is safe. I mean, first thing I said was the Hindenburg, you know, but he said no, that's everybody says that apparently, but it's much safer. But so there's a lot of innovation, and there's a lot of opportunities to invest in that innovation. So, you know, investing in environmental solutions is a great way complement to taking on the fossil fuel companies, and you know, it's going to fund the next big things, which, you know, which 10 years from now we'll be looking back at that and saying, you know, that's business as usual now. But today it's something that that new money is going into, and that's an impact investment, you know, funding the solutions of tomorrow. 10 years from now, when you're investing in this stuff, it's not going to be an impact investment because everybody will be doing it. But now you can catalyze the change with investment. So that's we publish research. As a matter of fact, we're working on an advanced biofuels project right now that will not use corn or cellulosic trees, which they haven't figured out a way to make that profitable yet, but actually use a dairy waste product from the production of Greek yogurt to produce ethanol. So you know, I think these solutions have to make sense. You can't be, you know, producing ethanol from corn. It takes 3 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of ethanol, and I think, you know, twice the energy goes into it making it that comes out. So so you know, you need to find solutions that make sense and also are profitable. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I'll bat last, and then maybe we'll have a conversation and eat some chili. So many good ideas about how to save the planet, and we should do a lot of them. One of the problems with the way the system is set up now is that the answers that Bill Line showed us, and Sally also, are not what our society is doing as a group. Oil is so much more profitable and so easy that they're not going to go out of business on purpose. In good environmental news, the Vermont Gas Pipeline looks like it's on its last legs after considerable public pressure on Governor Shumlin. He was pushing this very unpopular fracking gas pipeline, and I got involved with it because I met some of the people who were farmers who were getting eminent domain letters to insist that they would put a frack gas pipeline on their land. And so part of the problem is the oil companies have so much money they can hire lawyers and PR guys, and they can roll over the truth. But what I'm seeing is a counter measure to that is like our society is starting to value truth more. There's more accountability just because of the web and just because of the sort of internationalism. Technology people talk about the singularity coming, where like an information wave is coming at the human race. And that seems to be happening in some regards. And it works to our side, because if you're trying to sell someone blowing up their water supply, there's accountability in that. People will eventually know. Personally, I'm more worked up about fracking and natural gas than I am about oil at this point. Studying how 3% of the wells fail right away is basically saying that America is blowing up our water supply right now. I just think it's sort of damn unpatriotic. For all the sort of language we hear, rhetoric we hear about loving your country and voting for your president, like these people are willing to sell out our water supply. And I think we've just gotten to an age of accepting the unacceptable. So part of what I appreciate about the divestment movement and being part of the climate movement in general is that we get to stand up to the madness of the modern world. Naomi Klein has a great new book called This Changes Everything. And in it, she's talking about, well, if we lived in a sane world, we would be doing X, Y, and Z. But we don't live in a sane world. We live in a world where they're blowing up the water supply, and we're not planning for 50 years out into the future. And it's been considering like how immoral that is for a society to do at length. It's not only just lazy, but it's got a certain distasteful complacency with death. It's like if they were saying, okay, these are the trains and they're going to a Polish forest, and so come, get on and go, we would be like, no, we reject this design. So sort of vague reference to the 20th century's like cruelties, but we live in a bubble when the modernity's wealth, when the antibiotics still work and we have not wrecked the sky yet, and neo-fascists have not completely taken over our government. They're working on it, but not yet. And we have to, I think, try to empower the better angels of our nature to run the world. And that means we have to like take care of our farms and take care of our people, and we should have the good sense to like plan ahead for 100 years out. That's ethical and moral, and it's just we've given up on some of our like anyway, just to say
Core values.
We have the right, the human race has a right to be better than this. We struggled for a long time to get here, and we shouldn't just burn up the planet in 5 minutes because it's profitable for some oil companies. So let's do that. Let's stand together, and that's part of what's happening today. Global Divestment Day is happening all over the planet, and this is just the beginning of something. We're not going anywhere. We have a long way to go. The oil companies are going to leave that oil in the ground, and they're not going to profit from it. And so watch out, Rex Tillerson from ExxonMobil. You may not want fracking next to your property in Texas, but none of us want fracking, so. That's about all I have to say.
Talk about our politicians. Talk about what's going on in Washington, what's going on in Montpelier, and the changes that we need to see there, and how those people need to start following some of our examples. Talk a little bit about that, Theo.
Sure. Citizens United and the sort of, I'll start there. Russell Brand has a very funny critique of voting. And he says, you know, people should not be so accepting of our like completely broken political system. Vandana Shiva said this when she spoke in Burlington. She said, I hate to come and address you when your democracy is in such bad shape. And it's like, we've sort of accepted the situation where like they're all bought and nothing is working and we just send them our taxes and they continue to screw us and that's it. That's not acceptable. We have a right to a government that works, that serves us, that isn't corrupt, that plans 100 years out. Is that like too much to ask? It's not too much to ask. So I would like to see more people get involved with politics. I think we should, Reverend Steve Barry got elected in Manchester due to some of our help, and the Wilburton has supported that campaign. This guy's going to run for representative in Manchester in a few years, and maybe him endorse it, and maybe you in a...
Robert Chestnut Tangerman.
Robert Chestnut Tangerman. So, in general, I think we have a long future ahead of us, and we don't have to give up yet. The planet is still ours to save, and we should do that.
That's good.
So we have some chili to eat, and maybe take a picture of us to celebrate. It'd be nice to have some community discussion too.
Yeah, turn the camera off.
Turn the camera off.
Then we can say what we really feel.